Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Bulletproof Hygiene. Brittany and I are super excited to be with you today. And I want to say a sentence and just see how it resonates with you. Effective leadership is imperative to a purposeful, profitable, fulfilling hygiene career. I'm going to say it one more time. Effective leadership is imperative to a purposeful, profitable, fulfilling hygiene career. So I think honestly that we would all agree with that statement, but part of me wonders how many of us immediately kind of assign the concept of that leadership to either our doctors or our office managers. And we think, yeah, we want to have a great career. We want to, make money and be, have our fulfillment and our purpose, but we've got to have great leadership for that. And we kind of put that on someone else. And so if you haven't learned us by now, Brittany and I are kind of the take the reins, make your own destiny kind of girls. So you got to know we're going to flip the script on this one. And we really want to talk about our own leadership potential as hygienists within the practice and to our teams and to the medical community in general. And I got to be honest and say that I've kind of been burdened by some recent posts on forums about poor leadership from the top down. And hygienists feeling stuck and burned out and ready to leave the career. And, I want to acknowledge that, yes, there is definitely some practice toxicity out there. That concept of don't stay in an abusive relationship rings true here. But I'm really more concerned that we as hygienists are kind of getting stuck in our own heads and our own mindset of, well, there's really nothing I can do about it. And so I think that today we want to kind of challenge ourselves to get out of that fixed mindset of, well, woe is me, I can't do anything about it. This is just how it is. And I want to talk about the role that we have to play as leaders in our practice. And it's really a double, kind of a triple role between, being the leader guide to our patients, being a leader and support to our team, and then to the medical community as a whole. And I love the saying, be a thermostat and not a thermometer. I heard that years ago and it really resonated with me. Like the thermostat's what sets the temperature of the room. And the thermometer is just what tells you what the temperature is. So you want to be a thermostat where you're dictating that kind of, what tone are you setting? What attitude are you bringing? What's your mindset while you're there? And not just reflective of what's happening in the team culture, because sometimes that's not the healthiest thing. And I know we as hygienists are the second most educated team member in the practice and the only other producer. So it's super, super important that we step into that leadership role. And I know Brittany is 1,000% on board with me because both of us have had experiences where we have done it, where we haven't done it, and it's really impacted our career. So I'm going to let her kind of weigh in as well, because I think this is just one of the most important things we get to do as hygienists.
Yeah, and thanks for that awesome intro. Yeah, so we're the second most educated team member in the practice and the only other producer, as you just said. So I think that that's something to look at and something to consider. But it's really it's important, and it is important, but it's kind of like not in other ways. So I think that being a great leader involves being able to have influence on others in like an inspirational and kind of like leading anyone or leading a horse to water, kind of like no matter what, lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink kind of thing. And that goes for like people too, we all have influence. We're all leading others in our own way every single day, whether we realize it or not, or whether it's intentional or not. But being the quote unquote second most educated team member just means, we may have gone to school. We have a license. We definitely went to school, but we may have gone to school for 2 to 4 years at least, or maybe even more. But that's not to say that some of our admin team hasn't either, or some of our supporting team hasn't either, or didn't have, this isn't their secondary career or whatever. So I think that's an important thing to consider. Education is a really, really important and necessary thing whenever you're in a medical field, clearly, or in any field, but it's not the only thing, right? So I learn every single day from people on my admin team who a lot of them have bachelor's degrees, a lot of them don't. A lot of them have no experience in dentistry. Some of them do, it's just, I think everyone's unique background makes it even more interesting. And even more dynamic when when we remain open to learning from everyone on the team, despite their educational background or their history. Because I really do. And I continue to learn from people who have no experience in dentistry, because they may have a different perspective than I do, coming into dentistry from a different field. Maybe they came from restaurant, maybe they came from marketing, maybe they came from, just different things, and they have a different way of looking at things. Maybe they're more or less analytical, maybe they're more or less B-type. All those approaches, are important. And so I think it's important to say, like, yeah, we're highly educated, but probably so are the supporting, the other supporting team members as well. And of course, our dentists, they have doctor behind their name, so that goes without saying. But I think that education is just one piece of the puzzle. And in regards to leadership, this is something that I'm super, super passionate about, because I've seen it done really, really well and effectively, and really, really terribly and ineffectively. So I kind of want to touch on like what it looks like what does effective leadership look like? What does ineffective leadership look like? What are the qualities that make this work or not work? When are those quote unquote following the leaders most successful and empowered? So do you want me to jump into that right now?
Yeah. And right before you do that, I just want to touch on what you're saying. Like, I think I totally, of course, agree with what you're saying about, different levels of education. That's not a huge factor for me, because I think all of us have value in the practice. I mean, it's like a team on a soccer field. Every position has a ton of value, and you can't do it without one another. Right. If you pass the ball and your teammate's not in the position they need to be in, that's going to be a fail. And so I think education is obviously one thing, but I think just personality wise and experience wise and background wise. And I just think there's so much value in every single team member across the board. And that was, one thing I think is to have a strong organization. I think you have to have strong leadership and in every department and in every level. Right. So I think, I totally agree with what you're saying.
Yeah. So let's kind of, I want to give kind of some examples of when I've seen leadership, quote unquote, leadership go badly. So a lot of times I think leadership is ineffective when the person in leadership is really just managing people, like acting as a manager and not as like a liaison, not as an educator, not realizing that they're talking to a human. So it goes back to this thing that I've seen like over and over in just different work environments, different work atmospheres, not just, in dentistry, not just in what we do, but we're all leading all day long in our own homes, right? Like we pay our bills, we are raising our children, we have relationships with our spouses and significant others, and we're taking care of issues as they arise. We're extremely effective in leading our own lives. And then we go to work and it's like this like swap in dynamic where like there's all this highly structured, like trickle down of like who's at the top and who's the next person under that person and who's the next. And I think that that's important, and it's great to have a point person to say like, oh, who can I go to solve this problem or to help me with this issue, or who has this particular responsibility within an organization. Like, I think that having that structure and organization is important, but I think that a lot of times from the top down, it might be viewed ineffectively, like I am over these people, like there's like a control or micromanagement aspect, and that's where it really goes wrong, in my opinion. So we're doing all this stuff at home, we're effective leaders at home, we're running our own show, and then we go to work, and this is like an oversimplification, and I know that most of us don't deal with this issue, thankfully, but it almost feels like sometimes I have to raise my hand to go to the bathroom, or like I have to like ask to go get a sip of water, not in my work environment. I'm talking about past work environments. And I know you don't feel this way either, but just work in general, there's like this like switch, like we walk into the workplace and now we're like idiots, or we can't think for ourselves, or this person's my boss, so I'm going to just turn my brain off and let them run the show. And I'm just going to go through making the donuts and go through the physical like aspects of my job without it ever turning my brain on, kind of thing. And I think that we've been trained from both sides, like I think a lot of people in quote unquote management have this idea of like, yeah, I have to tell you how to do your job. And like, I don't think it's conscious. I think it's subconscious. Like I have to basically do it for you. And micromanagement, is just one of those things that's so detrimental to to people really advancing, and not just advancing themselves, but advancing our profession, advancing their own workplace, advancing your workplace, essentially. Like I can think of times when I've been micromanaged, and what initially occurs to me when someone is essentially coming in, holding my hand and doing my job for me is, I'll go do something else. Like,
Right.
why are we both going to do the same job? Like, you're going to do my job. I'll go do something else. Like,
Right.
great, you do it. You know, I'm not doing it too.
And
So
it's really sad because we are such unique individuals that possess some really amazing qualities. And if you just feel like a lemming coming in and kind of you're just, like stuck in this rut, you don't really get to shine who you are. And I think especially for us in the medical field where we're dealing with so many patients with different personalities and different issues, I mean, we know that they connect with a hygienist typically more than anyone else because they're spending the most time with us. And if we're not allowed to kind of be who we are and shine in that and really connect on that front, then the practice is not going to thrive.
right.
Yeah.
It's not. No, I agree with you. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. But yeah, anytime there has been micromanagement, it inspires people to turn their brains off.
Mm-hmm.
Like someone else jumps in and is doing, everything that I'm supposed to do, or I'm able to do and I want to do. Like I said, I'm not going to do it, and neither is anyone else. Like, why would they waste their time? Why are you wasting your time? I'm going to go find something else to do, kind of thing. Here, you can do my job. I'll go do something else. But it enables brain turning off, so people start turning off their brains and they come to work and they're bored because they don't have to think because they're being micromanaged or someone else is holding their hand the entire time. So that is disruptive and gets in the way of having a healthy organization, because then you've got this one person in authority and it's parental. It becomes parental. Like, this person is above me and, thinking for me and being my, I don't know what the right word is besides parent,
Right.
But it's not great. Your organization will suffer that way because you have these two people who, if, hopefully if you hired someone, they're a person with certain skills and attributes that are desirable and could be good for your organization if you would enable them to use their unique attributes, and when that's happening, they're not being empowered to use their unique attributes. So essentially they're functioning as one person instead of two very able and equipped people and licensed and educated people,
Right.
So that's when I've seen that go wrong. And times when I've seen leadership go right is when someone has, like, I gave the instance of Dr. Craig and giving me, some autonomy, like, hey, I'll trust you with a small thing. Go ahead and take that. You do what you're going to do with it. Let's look at the outcome together and see how it went. And then he'd give me some coaching and some feedback and say, this is what went well. This isn't very desirable. And it's okay for him to, like, check back. That's accountability. Like, hey, how's it going? If we set it by when, him to say, like, hey, the date's coming up. What's it look like for you? Are you going to make it by the deadline, kind of thing? But not like have his hands in the entire time on the entire project, like steering the wheel. Like, that's my job, And I think a difficult thing in leadership is learning when to delegate and how to delegate and who to delegate to. And a lot of that involves asking, like, really high quality questions. So what I think of is, like, in quarterly reviews. I love doing quarterly reviews. Like, it's one of my favorite things with the hygienist because we ask a lot of high quality questions, and we have, like, this structured questionnaire. And at the end of the questionnaire, it's like, what are your hobbies and interests? What do you like to do when you're not doing dental hygiene? How do you learn best? Kinesthetically, auditorily, visually, and all of those things help me to connect to them as people and to keep them intrigued and keep them as an active participant, because I can appeal and I can delegate to them things that actually interest them, and it empowers them.
Right.
Because I'm like, hey, here's the thing. And if it's a new person, I'm going to do what Dr. Craig did for me. Like, here's a small thing. Hey, I see that you're interested in this particular thing and you learn visually, or you like design. Would you like to design this perio handout, for our patients or something? And then they do it and they have their own success in doing it. And it comes out good. Then they feel empowered and they get positive feedback from me, like, hey, that's really great. Like, awesome. You took the reins on that. You did it. They feel empowered to do more of that. And they liked it. They liked it. It keeps people alive.
Yep. Yeah. And I think it creates growth, and that's what life is all about. If you're just stagnantly doing the same thing over and over and over, once you get the taste for, hey, I can do that, and that was exciting, then I feel like there's a huge gap in, we don't realize how much, when you appreciate someone, when you kind of applaud what they're doing and empower them, how much more they'll do of their own volition. So I think it's really, really important to, yes, encourage the team members around you to kind of, we do a DISC assessment at our office that helps us really understand each person's kind of strengths and weaknesses and personalities. Because it's, like I said, it's a team, and you've got all these different amazing abilities. And the DISC just helps us identify those, so that when we do have tasks that need to be done, or we do have something new, or a new direction we're trying to take, we kind of know who to reach out for that. Who's going to be great at this? Who can help with this? And it just gives you that excitement because you're doing something new and different. Right. And dentistry can get really monotonous because, you're seeing patient after patient after patient. So finding some new and different and spreading that around is a really great way to add excitement and ownership.
Right. And if it's done right, I've seen like the transition from ineffective leadership, like that micromanaging style, to
right.
leadership, that like free, autonomous, enhancing, growing, exciting style. And a lot of times what I've noticed is people who are being led to be more thinking creatively and innovatively and on their own, a lot of times at first it's uncomfortable because it's like they've been having to go to work this entire time, and they've been having to use their brains, and they've been having to do certain things, and it gets to be like they get to, but that involves work for them too, so it's like critical thinking is now a part of their job. And for people who are like wanting a fulfilling and passionate career and don't just want to show up and do trophies 9 to 5, that's where they're going to thrive and shine. But a lot of times that transition from their quote unquote job to their career and their passion, and the switch being turned on to like, hey, you have all this information, you have all this education, like I want you to use it.
Right.
It's like, it's a little scary sometimes.
Yes.
People, like even good people, even like good employees, if they've been in this environment where they're just like being crushed and like dying slowly and suffering because they're not allowed to flex their own leadership style, and then they go to this thing, it can be a little bit like, I've had some like pushback, and some I can tell people are uncomfortable, and they're like, what the heck is happening? Like, what do you mean I have to solve my own problem? Like, but then they do it and they're like, oh, like, and then they get to come to work and they get to do all this stuff.
Right.
So I think that's pretty human to experience that too. If you're like, oh wow, yeah, there's a lot of micromanagement in my job atmosphere, and then you're trying to change that dynamic and change that culture. At first, expect some tension. I feel like, it's just wanted to change.
Yeah. And I can speak to that personally because, you talked about when somebody gets ignited and then they, like, oh, I can do this. I want to do this, I should say. And then they start kind of looking at it and it's like, oh, this is going to be kind of hard and kind of uncomfortable for a little while. And I experienced that, when I came into Atlanta Dental Spa and learned about the oral systemic connection, and then really started learning and then really started geeking out on it. And I went to Dr. Bolden and was like, hey, can I have a microscope? And he's like, what do you want that for?
Yeah. Right.
And I do love him because he is so business minded, and it makes total sense to me. He's like, yeah, I'll make that investment if you can tell me what you're going to use it for, how it's going to benefit the practice. And I think, sometimes people will bump up against that and think, oh, he didn't want to do that. So never mind, I'm good.
Yeah.
So I had to kind of create a presentation for what I was going to do with it and how I was going to use that. And then to bring it in, I had to research, finding the right ones and all the pieces I would need for that, and then learning how to use it and educate myself on what I was seeing. So that was a whole process that, on the front side was pretty daunting and pretty uncomfortable. And hard at the beginning. And I didn't know exactly what I was doing. And so it was uncomfortable for a while, but now it's this really cool opportunity to get to see what's going on in a patient's mouth and share that with them, and make sure that, the therapy we're doing is effective. And so that's a perfect example of it feeling hard and uncomfortable, but getting through that and then being like, oh my gosh, I did that. This is so cool.
Yeah.
What else can I do? Kind of thing.
Exactly. And I can imagine how empowered you felt after you did all that work. It was finally a yes. And then you onboarded it, and now you're successfully using it, and you did all that,
Right.
But I do want to speak to, like, on both ends, on your end and on Dr. Bolden's end. Honestly, I think both of those things are an example of great leadership, because as a business owner, he has a responsibility to protect the practice, and he knows what's going on in regards to the numbers, like more so than anyone does. Like, I know how he's very engineering minded and loves the numbers and loves the stats and loves organization and systems and that sort of thing. So like, I can imagine how much he knows and how intricately he knows the numbers and how to protect the practice as a whole, from financial and economic hardship, so I'm sure that was his come from initially. So that's great leadership on his end, like saying, yeah, like, I don't want to just say yes. I know Charissa's a badass, and like, I know that she has great ideas, but like, I'm not just going to say yes. I'm going to challenge you. And I think that's what the best leaders do. Like, I'm going to challenge you, like, hey, what are you going to do? Come up with a plan, prove it. So he kind of like stimulated and gave you the opportunity to do that and flex your leadership muscle when he did that. And then you flex your leadership muscle by going and doing it, and not just looking at like what felt like pushback or a barrier, because really, like, when it comes down to it, we all need to protect ourselves and protect our houses and protect our whatever, and that comes with appropriate questioning and appropriate accountability of others, right? So that's what he did for you. And then you said, well, I'm not going to take that and be put off by that little bit of resistance that I just, because it's reasonable resistance. He wasn't like, no, you're stupid, go away, that's a bad idea. He was like, like, I'm willing to consider that if you do X, Y, and Z. And then you did X, Y, and Z, and guess what? It happened, like, he kept his word. That's also great leadership, by the way. But after you went and did your own critical thinking, and you investigated and you put the time in it, and you weren't off put by like his saying, like, you've got to prove this kind of thing.
Right.
So I think that's important, because that's a good point that you just made about, people, I think, sometimes get a little bit of pushback, either from our patients, even, if we think about it from patient perspective, like what you say, loss in the measure of the patient's health. Like, yeah, we've got to expect some pushback. Like, that's a loss to them, like, so when we tell them they have perio disease, they weren't expecting it. This is something that's asymptomatic. They probably haven't even seen the pink in the sink yet. Like, they might not be flossing to even know that, I know we're educated them before about the numbers. It's like, yes, you've got to expect some pushback. That's a normal human response, and so was it on Dr. Bolden in that instance. But I'm really glad when people overcome that and they're like, oh, this is normal. Like, they just asked me a question. They just have a concern. Let's get to the bottom of that. Let's keep asking why, what, how, instead of just like, oh God, there was some resistance, let me just give up now and throw in the towel.
Yeah. So I know, Brittany, you have done kind of some extensive work on different types of leadership styles. And that's super intriguing to you. So educate me, because I haven't done a whole lot of that.
So leadership is something that I'm super passionate about. And I love, I think, like I mentioned before, just the micromanaging is the death of leadership and innovation, and empowering others to be the best selves, and just challenging others to be their best selves, keeping them accountable, is like the best way to lead. Hang on, I just got signed out here. Give me 1 second to get back. And so
I know you've talked in the past, you shared with me a little bit about the GLOBE research, which is Global Leadership and Organizational Behavior Effectiveness, the Robert House of the Wharton School of Business. And they came up with several different types of leadership styles.
Right. Yeah. So the study by Robert House, he's from the Wharton School of Business, by the way, which is like one of the most prestigious business schools like in the United States. So that's a pretty cool distinction. But 1991, Robert House looked into leader effectiveness and culture, and it was called the GLOBE study, where he sought to determine how culture is related to societal organization and leader effectiveness. So this was something in the 1990s. He wanted to uncover how culture is related to the societal organization and leader effectiveness. And what he did was researched and compiled a bunch of empirical information from 17,000 mid-level managers, almost 1,000 organizations in 58 countries worldwide. So it was deemed GLOBE, and that's an acronym for Global Leadership and Organizational Behavioral Effectiveness. So he kind of determined 6 different types of leadership, or 6 leadership styles, and he labeled them from the quote unquote most effective and most empowering leadership styles to the least effective. So I won't go through all of them like in real depth, but I do want to highlight the best and the worst, kind of, because I think that we will all kind of relate to what these look like. The first, the best one, the number one on the list of 6 leadership styles, is called the charismatic or value-based style. And this stresses high standards, decisiveness, and innovation. It seeks to inspire people around a vision, creates a passion among them to perform, and does so by firmly holding on to core values. This includes facets of visionary, inspirational, self-sacrificial, integrity, decisive, and performance-oriented leadership. So this reminds me a lot, this and the next, the team-oriented style, remind me a lot of some of the things that we do at Spodak, and I know that you guys do at ADS. We're heavily and deeply rooted in our vision and our core values, and that's what it goes back to for everyone constantly. So stressing high standards, having decisiveness, and enabling innovation, like you have to have this really like well set up and designed culture and this firm foundation to be able to have those things. Because in order to have high standards, you have to have specifically depicted what the standards are, what they look like, where they're coming from, you know, and they all stem from our core values. And in order to be as decisive as we possibly can be, like this is where we're going next, and have unity and certainty about where we're going next, especially in the leadership. We've got to all understand where we're going, where we came from, what the quote unquote rules are, what our agreements are as a team, you know, and understanding, and then to have innovation. Like, I think it's important, especially when we're talking about innovation, because it involves so much creativity, and to different people, that means so many different things, that there has to be like this parameter, you know, this parameter to bounce ideas off of, kind of, and we're each other's parameter at Spodak. But innovation, it can be, I think, a tricky thing and a challenging thing for a lot of quote unquote bosses or business owners to allow innovation in their organization. But I think it becomes scary when there really aren't those parameters in place, or they're not well thought out, or they're not really organized, or they've really underestimated the importance of important culture and values and vision, you know. So this doesn't surprise me, reading about the charismatic value-based style being the most effective leadership style, because it's just on a firm foundation. There's been a lot of conversation and intentional planning about who we are, kind of thing, you know, what our come from is. Some of the other most effective leadership styles are called the team-oriented style. It instills pride, loyalty, and collaboration among organizational members, highly values team cohesiveness and a common purpose or goals. Then you've got the participative style, which encourages input from others and decision-making and implementation, and emphasizes delegation and equality. Delegation and equality are really important to me, but I think that these two fall under that first charismatic value-based style, because they don't depict as strongly the foundation, which goes back to the values. Right. You know, like I think that these are kind of like, the lower we get on this list, the more it's like the branches of leadership and away from the core or the trunk, you know. So as we go back to the core of the trunk, which is the values and the integrity and all the stuff that's foundational, that makes sense to me. So some of the worst leadership styles, the self-protective one, and this just the name reminds me of ego, you know, self-protective style.
That me mentality. What's in it for me?
What's in it for me? And it literally says, style emphasizes procedural, status conscious, and face-saving behaviors. So instead of saying, hey, we're in trouble, I made a mistake, I think that we should pivot here, it is like, oh crap, I made a mistake. Let me hide this, pretend that I didn't, not show anyone, and hope that it'll fix itself, kind of thing. Or let me see if I can do it myself, because I don't want to admit that I made a mistake. Like it's face saving. And that's a problem. You know, one saying that I know that some people hate, but I love is save your ass, not your face. Like, save the actual ship as it's going down. Don't just say like, no, we're fine, the ship's not going down, as it's like you're treading water and you're like drowning because you don't want to admit that you went the wrong way, you know. Kind of. So save your ass, not your face. And then the worst leadership style is called the autonomous style, which includes only one facet concerned with autonomy. It's characterized by independent, individualistic, and self-centric approach to leadership. So clearly that's kind of like...
That's when you're on the soccer field and it's the ball hog that won't pass it to anyone. Mm-hmm. And they can't make it down to the end to score the basket. That's kind of what that's about. Yeah. I feel like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not good. So,
what's interesting to me is, you know, when you talked about kind of the top 3 styles, I feel like there's some really good positives from each one of those. And I almost kind of view it as like a braid or a cord, you know, where there's these different strands kind of braided together and it all kind of implements together, because I think there's a lot of aspects to leadership that are important. So I think it's really cool I almost want to lump those top three like in one, because I think there's a lot that's important there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they did score really, really closely. I think that 6.1 was the highest score, and then the lowest score was 4.5. I'm not sure if this is out of 10 or where the scores came from. I know that I investigated it really like thoroughly and in depth about a year ago. Now I don't remember where the numbers come from, but the numbers, the ranges of like the numeric score for leader effectiveness on all three of these is very, very similar. Like the lowest one is 4.5 to 6.5. I'm sorry, that's the highest one. And the lowest one is 4.5 to 6.1. So they're all very close on the effectiveness scale. And it's funny that you say that, because then 4, 5, and 6 are significantly and drastically different, where they drop. There's like there's a plateau for a little while, and then it just like falls off.
Right.
Yep. So I think that we can go into our 3 roles as leaders, as you mentioned before. So we're leaders to our patients, we're leaders to our profession and the medical field, and then we're leaders to our own team. So we've been talking about leadership to our own teams, but let's talk about for a second how we are leaders in the profession as a whole. So I think that our GPs in our practice are definitely the quarterbacks, right? Like they're running the show kind of thing. We run the show in a lot of ways. We're co-diagnosticians. We are doing a lot of the assessment, gathering a lot of information, connecting with the patients on an emotional level, getting to the bottom of a lot of their issues, and kind of like handing that information to them, where hopefully they can come in and bobblehead. But at the same time, they're ultimately responsible for referring, to specialists when necessary, coordinating big picture restorative treatment, partnering with us to make sure that the right things are happening. But I think in our profession and in the medical profession, it's important to understand and remember what Dr. Michael Roizen said, who is an anesthesiologist at the Cleveland Clinic. And I know that you're really passionate about the book, The Shift, and that's where I learned about this book. He wrote in this book, and I know that he spoke when he was speaking at the Cleveland Clinic and doing a CE thing there, was talking about how
the keynote for AOSH there one year.
Oh, okay, AOSH, okay, got it. Yeah, he was talking about how we're essentially the go-betweens for the entire medical profession. So meaning that we see our patients for preventive services more often than their own general doctors, their primary care physicians. People are coming into us usually, on average, every 6 months, every 3 to 4 months, just for a check-in. So if we're not gathering baseline data on what's going on with the rest of their body, then we're not filling the huge shoes that we're wearing. We're not filling that gap adequately or appropriately. And he said, like, he was really the one who was like, hey, you guys, here's these enormous shoes, like, please fill it. Like, we need you to fill it. And it was a call to action. And it was like, dude, like, do you understand where you are? Like, do you understand how pivotal your role is in all of this? And if we don't, then we're doing a huge disservice to our patients, but also we're doing a huge disservice in regards to ourselves and our profession in dentistry. Like, if we are not really showing up to work and actively checking and actively educating and actively having this relationship with our patients, it's really not fair to them.
Right. And so many systemic issues manifest orally. And so we are kind of the window looking in to see what's going on. And, when we're understanding that our patients are having a hard time managing their A1C, and we look in there and we see bleeding and inflammation, well, gosh, that's not a big issue. I mean, not a big question as to what's going on here. And if we're really going to lead in the right way, then sometimes that's reaching out to the medical community and, just kind of sending a message over to their doctor and saying, hey, just so you know, this is what we're seeing. This is what we're treating. This is what's going on. And it's kind of building that bridge. I've spoken to many OBGYNs over the years of, patients I have that are pregnant and expecting, because we're seeing, lots of bleeding and inflammation, and, we want to use some therapies and some techniques, and I always get clearance for that. But I think there is a big bridge we can build between the medical community, because, oral manifestation is huge. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that, so I had an experience when I was getting my bachelor's degree where I had to do an externship, and I chose to, well, it's funny. Let me back up and say this. So getting my bachelor's degree, it's bachelor's in dental hygiene, bachelor of applied science in dental hygiene. The entire curriculum was about interprofessional collaboration, and how to, collaborate effectively with other specialties outside of the dentistry realm. And so after, 2 years of going through the importance of that and how to do it effectively, I pitched my quote unquote capstone project, and I wanted to do an externship at a primary care physician's office. And they also do a lot of holistic medicine and like Easternized medicine sort of stuff. And I thought that would be really interesting to learn how to connect and communicate. Yeah. And so I pitched this idea, and it's so funny. The initial feedback that I got from my instructor was like, did you even pay attention? Like, what do you mean you want to do this? This is about dentistry. It's not about like medicine. And did you read the instructions? And I emailed back and was like, yeah, interprofessional collaboration. Like, what the heck? But it's just so funny after all of that. Even my instructor, like the hygiene instructor, was like, I'm missing, what are you talking about? You want to go to a PCP's office? And I was like, what? Like, isn't this what it was all about? So I ended up, so after I wrote the email back, like, hey, this is my line of thinking. This is where this is coming from. This is based on all of these projects that we've done. Like, why wouldn't I want to go to a PCP? Why wouldn't I do something outside of a dental office or a dental hygiene school? Like, this is the point, And she was like, oh, and was like, okay, she allowed me to move forward. But it was just so funny how that's like the knee-jerk thought and reaction of even people in our field. It's like, yeah, we understand how important we are, but do we really? Kind of thing, And then she had like kind of an aha moment, and I had an aha moment, like, oh, that's really where we are as an industry.
Right. And unfortunately, there still is a big gap there between physicians and dentists. And, I think in the line of us talking about leadership, that is somewhere we need to broaden our scope and really, put our foot forward. And, it's probably going to take a while before we're really able to close that gap, but it's definitely not going to happen if we're not moving forward, if we're not sending letters about what's going on, if we're not making phone calls. So that's something that we do need to be mindful of.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, I got to see from the other side. So when I was shadowing this doctor, Dr. Dudley, actually, he's brother-in-law of one of the doctors that I work with, Dr. Dudley. And he was fantastic. And I got to see a lot of interesting cases and got to see a lot of things that I haven't seen firsthand, and have conversations and see kind of like, quote unquote, the other side of things. I know it, I've experienced as a patient at his office, but not as the provider. So that was an interesting perspective to have. And it really did enlighten me about, patients said certain things that connected really heavily with dentistry and dental hygiene. And I think that he, like, no fault to him, it's like they don't learn this either. Neither of us learn in school how to connect the dots on all of these things, I think, even as like a PCP, and clearly has a lot more education than I do, but patients said a lot of things that I was like, I could really help that patient with that problem, or I wish that they would go to a dentist,
Right.
Whether it was something like from a sore in their mouth to their diabetes being out of control. And, people even mention, like, I haven't been in the dentist in years. I haven't been a doctor in years. This is the first time I'm coming back. And I really just wanted to be like, go to the dentist, but it was interesting just seeing that perspective and how much information he could give if he were empowered to give that information, or like had the information to give. So it was really interesting. I ended up giving a presentation for him and his team, and just talked about some basic things, tooth decay and how that relates to general health, and periodontal disease, how that relates to general health, and oral cancer and the prevalence of oral cancer. Just like went through some, photos and basic stats. And it was so interesting after that, like how I even saw a switch in him, which is really cool because he didn't have to change anything. He's been practicing for, I don't know, 20 years, like he didn't have to change anything. But it was interesting, as I kept shadowing him, he would ask people questions according to my presentation. And I think that it would be really helpful if we had like a physician's perspective in the same way, if they would come to a dental office for a day and be like, hey, you should refer when you see this, or like, this is what I'm seeing that you could potentially play a part in, kind of thing. Or, I just thought it was really eye-opening and cool. It was interesting to learn about what doctors do and don't learn, or what they do and don't focus on. And when they're learning about the entire body and everything that could possibly happen and go wrong, the oral stuff is like so minimal and minuscule. They've got to learn about everything else in the body, so it was just really cool. He would start asking questions about, when's the last time you've gone to a dentist, and how long has this been hurting for, or like, your diabetes is out of control, it's been out of control for a while, why don't you go see your hygienist, kind of thing. And it was just interesting to see kind of like some of the questions that he started asking, and the ways that he kind of like tweaked his own verbiage and communication with the patients after my presentation. So I can only imagine if there's a lot more of that went on between the professions.
Right. Yeah. One day we can dream.
Today, it could be today.
So, I think I want to talk about, obviously, if we're talking about leadership and how to be great leaders, I think I want to just kind of touch on some things that get us there, what we need to be focused on. Some necessary qualities to be a great leader. And I think first and foremost, and I know you and I both encompass this, is that growth mindset. Mm-hmm. It's getting out of that fixed concept of, well, this is how it is. This is how it's always going to be. I'm just going to drudge in and do my thing and go back home. And it's really sad to me that people are in that situation and feel that way, because you think about how many hours we spend at work, versus how many hours we're home with our loved ones that we're not sleeping. Mm-hmm. And the work hours far outweigh the family time. So, that's an uncomfortable, miserable place to be in. So I think it's the first thing you've got to do is kind of ask yourself, where am I in my mindset? Do I just feel like, well, that's it. That's just how it's going to be. Or am I willing to kind of step out of that and think, it might be uncomfortable right now, but what can I do that might change the situation?
Yeah.
So I think it's doing some kind of deep diving on your own mentality and what your thoughts are, and kind of opening yourself up to that. And I know sometimes that feels a little risky, because it's like, well, gosh, what if I go in and I try to be really positive and they shoot me down? Well, is that worse than the situation you're in right now?
Right. And that's a guarantee also. It's like,
oh, yeah, for sure.
It's guaranteed that if we ask a question, we're going to be told no. It's a guarantee that if we try something new, we're going to fail. Like, it's a matter of, where do I want to go? What am I willing to do to get there? And like, who can help me along the way? What do I have to do to reach that goal? And I think that reverse engineering comes into play in a big way when we're asking ourselves or trying to take on a challenging question. And honestly, the first thing that I ask when I'm reverse engineering is I go way, way, way far in the future. And I say, this is super deep. Sorry, I'm like taking it there.
You're good.
If I'm like on my deathbed and like I look back on my life, like what do I want to have contributed to the world, and what do I want to have left behind? What legacy do I want to leave behind? And for me, it's probably different than it is for most people, because I don't think that I want to have children. So for most people, I think it's like I had children, I passed on my legacy to them, and this is what I taught them and instilled in them. And for me, it's a little different, because I'm like, what did I contribute that didn't have to do with like me having offspring and letting them carry the torch? Like who else's life did I change or contribute to? And so that's, I think, my starting point for the most part. And then I take it to a less global thing and a more like immediate thing. Like, okay, by when do I want to accomplish this? What is this thing? What's the outcome that I want? And, just like in any conversation, like with others, like what's my come from and what's my intention for this? Like, is it about my ego and wanting people to know who I am and get recognition and get a pat on the back? Or is it really about me wanting to make a difference and leave something positive behind, like cause a positive change? And if I know for a fact that to my core, I really just want to make a positive change and leave something behind for someone else, or like make someone's life easier, better in some way, that's the torch that I wanted to carry truly. If I'm asking myself the question and being honest, then I can rightfully say, okay, then what am I willing to do that? And it becomes a much more steadfast thing, instead of just like the surface, like, oh, I want to add PerioProtect and I don't really know why, I just, Brittany and Charissa really believe in it. And so I'm just going to try and pitch this to my dentist kind of thing.
Right.
If it's something that you're passionate about and speaks to your heart and your purpose, I think that it becomes a lot easier to overcome the obstacles and realize, like, I don't really care if I fail, like, so what? Like, so what? Like I failed 5 times and then I finally succeeded kind of thing. Like, what's the big deal?
Well, and I think what you said earlier is so big. And I think it's a big part of, if you're listening and you're like, you know what, I think I should take more of a role, more of a leadership role. I probably haven't been contributing as much as I should. I think it's so important to know what you said, that we are going to face resistance. Mm-hmm. Knowing that ahead of time, I think it's important to wrap your head around that, because when it happens, you're much less likely to be like, oh, this is uncomfortable, I'm out. It's like, oh, there it is. I knew it was coming. I knew it was going to be there. But anything worth anything worth having is worth fighting for, right? So knowing that the new, the different is going to be uncomfortable. So say you've been in that fixed mindset, oh, this is how it is, it's not going to get any better. And you decide today, like, you know what, I'm going to go in and I'm going to be more positive. I'm going to step into this leadership role and know that you're going to have that pushback of your teammates going like, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you, where, who gave you a happy pill? What's happening here? People naturally don't like change. And so when anytime you're trying to implement something new, whether it's just a better attitude or a more positive attitude, people are going to kind of butt up against that. People, for some reason, struggle a little bit when they see people around them doing a little better. And so you got to expect that, knowing that that's going to be kind of the first impression, I guess I'd say.
Yeah. And I think that's really human nature. If I think of when I'm not thinking consciously, if I see someone who's doing quote unquote better, or they're doing quote unquote more than me, or they're quote unquote more successful, my knee-jerk reaction when I'm not actually thinking about it might be like, what the heck? Like it might go down the I'm not good enough, or what's wrong with them, or it's not fair, or different things like, why are they doing that? Kind of like it comes from a place of insecurity or judgment or knee-jerk kind of just like human tendencies. But then if you actually think about it, it's like, they're doing something great for the world. What can I do that's great for the world? Because ultimately it's just a mirror of us. What we're thinking and doing is about us. It's about me. What I'm thinking about that person is my problem, and it's usually just, I feel uncomfortable because they're doing something that I want to do, or like, I wish that I was helping the world in that way, or making that sort of difference, Right. I think it's everyone's kind of automatic and knee-jerk response, and that's okay. But it's just like change is an absolute, so is resistance, just like Charissa just said. So expect some resistance. And then I think it's important, just like anything else, and a lot of other things that we've talked about, to say, it's not about me. So it doesn't go back to my self-worth. If someone gives me pushback or questions me, they have a right to do that. First of all, like it's okay if they're not happy about this change. They can be uncomfortable and unhappy. They have the right to feel those ways, but it's about them and it's not about me. So if I segregate my self-worth from, whether or not people agree or approve or like what I'm doing or trying to implement, or my leadership style, then I'm going to be a lot more successful, a lot more happy in the long run. Right. And it enables everyone to feel their feelings, overcome things without judgment, and them to be more successful too. If the second I see that someone feels uncomfortable in my presence, I try and make them feel comfortable, then I'm ungrowing them. I'm taking the opportunity away from them to grow and to look at themselves and say like, why do I feel this way?
Well, and I'm going to throw this out there. We kind of are oscillating, because we've got to think about this leadership between the opportunity we have within our practice walls and with our team, and then the opportunity we have with our patient care. So this growth mindset is really important for the patient care too, because I think a lot of times we slip into that fixed mindset of, oh, Mr. Jones is coming in today and he never wants x-rays and he's never going to let me take x-rays. So I guess we're not doing x-rays. Oh, that's going to be a battle. I think it's like catching yourself and going, wait a minute, no, growth mindset. Like, I'm going to talk to Mr. Jones and really educate him today on why we need to do this. And I don't want to compromise his care, and I don't want to compromise his health. And, I'm going to take this challenge and see what I can do with it. So, we've got to kind of think about it in both directions.
Mm-hmm. And ask Mr. Jones quality questions as well. Mr. Jones, we might not have gotten to the bottom of Mr. Jones's hesitancy or his barrier. It might not be what we're thinking it is.
Right. So that leads me to my second necessary quality to be a great leader, and that's communication. Being really clear, being direct, talking about fact over feelings, and that, again, we can talk about this from a team approach or a patient approach. But so if we're talking to Mr. Jones about taking x-rays, it's that communication of what our standards are for him, because we are here to care for him and take care of him. And we can't see what's going on without those x-rays. And, I have some patients that we've sat down and I've educated, and we've, kind of created a compromise schedule, or maybe we do it every 18 months instead of every year, if they don't have a high decay rate. I had a patient this week that came in and, she was like, oh, I don't want to do those x-rays. I have a really bad gag reflex. And I said, well, how about you give me a try? Let me, give it a try. And if it's not working, we'll stop. But I've been doing this a long time. I think we can make it work. And she kind of went, yeah, I'm sure you can, like real sarcastically. And we did it and it went great. And she said, I'm seeing only you from now on. So for her, it was just a comfort thing, but it's just, and I have some patients who we have dismissed from the practice because we just don't share the same ideology on their health and wellness. And we're not willing to compromise their care and what we're doing, our standards of care. So communication is a big thing. Obviously, when we're talking about patients' treatment needs and educating on them on that, communication is huge, huge, huge for everything that we're doing. Yeah. But go ahead.
No. What I was thinking about, what you just said about that patient, is that's another example of meeting pushback and meeting discomfort and meeting lack of seeing eye to eye kind of thing. You met, oh my God, like friction. You met some pushback, and that's an uncomfortable moment for you, and an inflection moment for you in that scenario. And you didn't just stop with like, oh, she gags. I'm not gonna even broach this. I'm not even gonna try. I'm not gonna educate the person. You kept going. And I think that this is the important thing, is like, if all questions have been asked and all avenues have been explored and it's still not a fit, that's when it's not a fit. It's okay to have different values. It's okay to say, okay, the patient's, not a fit for the practice. But if all of the questions haven't been asked, all of the possible solutions haven't been explored, then that's not fair. And that's not right. If we stop and don't continue to push through at the first sign of, what's the word I'm looking for, Charissa? Not pushback.
Resistance.
Thank you. Yeah. At the first sign of resistance in any aspect. So going back to, Charissa asking Dr. Bolden for a microscope, like that was resistance, and she investigated and asked questions and did the research and got to the solution, so as long as we push through, ask all the questions, do as much as we can to find a solution. If it still doesn't work out, then fine, no problem. That's okay. Then we have an answer. But if you don't investigate, then you don't have an answer, and it's not fair to anyone involved.
Right.
So that's great communication, communicating until it's done, like over communicating is the way to go. Under communicating is usually a shit show, because in the absence of information, people fill in the blanks, right? And we can't make assumptions. When we're making assumptions, we're doing everyone a disservice. We're doing us a disservice. We're limiting patients. We're limiting our practice. So we can't do that. So this involves, the next thing on our list is putting others first and seeing it from their perspective. So that's a part of communication, is like putting on the empathy hat, seeing things from other people's perspectives. What could this mean from their situation and their scenario? Asking questions and not inferring what they're afraid of or what they want or the outcome that they're expecting. Really, really put on the empathy hat and see it from their perspective, and take it away from us and from you and me. It's the detachment. I can be empathetic without attaching myself to how that person's feeling and behaving. It's not about me, it's about them. And I just want to connect with them as a human, so if we can put them first, that'll help to get to resolution.
Right. And so I have just a really daily example for this kind of thing. So I have a new hygiene assistant. She's been with me for about 4 months, and she's very young and she's very green, learning a lot. And she, at the end of the day yesterday, she came in and she was kind of really frustrated, and she was venting about, she said, I'm just venting, about some frustration she had about sterilization piling up and feeling like, another team member wasn't doing her part. And, the first thing I said to her was like, you can come in and tell me this, but it doesn't make the situation any better. Like, I don't really think it even makes you feel better. I can't fix this for you. You need to go and talk to her. Mm-hmm. And if you need me to go with you, I can do that, but this is not the solution. This isn't going to fix anything until you're willing to go fix it. You're going to be stuck here, and that's not fun. But so that's, where I talk about communication's a thing. I feel like so many times we hold things in, or we don't really talk about them with that person, and that just breaks that unity and it creates judgment. But the putting others first and seeing it from their perspective is really important, because what she wasn't really thinking about is that other assistant was slammed. I mean, they had 4 rooms going at once and things were piling up. And so instead of like, it's easy to like walk into sterilization and see, you know, everything piled up and be like, oh my gosh, who's not doing their job? Instead of like taking a breath, thinking, like you said, it's those automatic thoughts, thinking for a second, wait a minute, we have a lot of patients here right now. Things are a little crazy. We will catch up with sterilization. We're not sleeping here at the end of the night. Like we'll get it done. But I feel like we make so many automatic thoughts throughout the day about other team members and what their roles are and what they're doing, when in reality, each team member juggles so many balls that we've got to have a lot of grace when people drop the balls, or if they're just busy doing something else. Like, I just feel like we've got to put others first in that, instead of like filtering everything through the me filter.
Right. And that goes into being a contributor and not a complainer. So what you did when you asked Bree, or when you asked your assistant, how, did she go to that person, what the problem is, do you need help resolving this sort of thing, is you switched her thinking. You said, hey, like you're thinking this is a personal kind of like attack, or this is, where others are lacking kind of thing, but have you gone directly to that person? And that's a switch of like, no, I haven't. And it's a switch from me wanting to quote unquote vent to wanting to find a solution, so you challenged her to get solution oriented, and then she had to, because you weren't going to sit there and just listen to her vent.
Right. And I actually even pointed at the schedule. I said, do you see like that at that time of day, do you see what was going on in the schedule and how busy they were? She's like, oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you enabled her to be a contributor and not a complainer. And that's helping to train others and giving them expectations of what they're going to get when they come to you in the future. Like if they truly want a solution, they're going to come to you. If they truly want to vent, they're not going to come to you. So the more that team members are like not contributing to that just venting kind of atmosphere and that kind of just like negative talk without seeking a solution, the less that's going to happen and the more solutions we're going to find.
Right. And I think that, and that goes much further than just, the conversations we have with people, but being a contributor and not a complainer. How many times does something happen in your day that you find yourself frustrated about, and then you just kind of move on instead of thinking, gosh, that frustrates me, but how could we do that different? What would be a better option for that? What would be a better solution for that? Right. And I think that is, that's a small thing, but it's a big thing in a leadership role. And I think for our teams, if we would all come at it that way, we would have a much more effective day and an effective, healthy team environment. If instead of complaining, I would just do what needed to happen.
Right.
Or talk about like, hey, let's create a solution for this.
Right. And I know that involves more work, and that's what stops most people up, I think, is it involves more work to go back and intentionally face that thought that you or I had or someone else has, and try and find a solution. But the flip side of that is if I have a thought like that, like one, this person is, lazy, or they're not doing their job, or they did something that negatively affected my day, or two, this isn't working, but then I don't do something. What that leads to is frustration and resentment. And then you start to resent your job. And that's when people leave without having a conversation, or leave without trying to find a solution, So that's a big problem. Resentment isn't sustainable. Like resentment is going to blow up in some way, or implode in some way. Some people implode and they have like a breakdown or a meltdown, and it's about them, and it's a very emotional thing if they've held on to all these thoughts and resentments and they haven't worked through it ever. Or it'll be like an explosion, like someone gets angry and it's an outburst and a lash out at other people and that sort of thing. But either thing is toxic and unhealthy, and it could be easily resolved, and everyone could be a lot happier if we would do the work that it takes on a daily basis to question those things and get to the bottom of them and find a solution.
Right.
The problem.
Right.
Yeah.
So this next one might sound a little odd, but I think it's a big deal, is being authentic. And obviously, yes, I don't mean like, don't be fake to people, but I really mean, we talked earlier about the benefits of having different personalities and different strengths and weaknesses and different talents. Mm-hmm. So it's important to be who you are, the healthy version of who you are. But it's also really important to be authentic. And I'll just give an example. Like, how many times have you had because again, we filter everything through the me filter, like you come in the morning and you're setting up sterilization and your coworker walks by and they don't say good morning to you. And you immediately think, oh gosh, what did I do? They don't like me. What's going on? This is going to be a bad day. You have those automatic thoughts. And in reality, that person maybe like has a migraine this morning. Maybe they didn't sleep well last night. Maybe they had a hard time getting the kids off to school in the morning, or, they had a fight with their husband. Whatever it is, I think there's that be authentic to, you don't have to obviously share your guts, but I think it's kind of nice if we'll be honest with each other and be like, hey, I didn't sleep well last night. I'm not my best self today. Mm-hmm. And then nobody's going to filter everything through the me filter of, oh gosh, they don't like me. We just know, hey, you're not in the best place. How can we support you? What can we do for you?
Yeah. And that goes back to, I think, over communicating. Like when in doubt, over communicate. I think, just say like, hey, I'm not feeling well. I'm not at my best today. Really sorry. I don't mean to occur this way. Or I didn't mean to occur this way when I said that or whatever. It's always better to follow up and circle back if you have any like unresolved feeling about something. And I think that a lot of people, especially in our culture, think that is like sensitive or needy or whatever. But I really just think that it's good communication, to be honest. I'd rather know than be left to wonder. I'd rather know the answer than just like be able to think things. But being authentic to me means, growing up, I didn't have a great sense of self. There wasn't a lot of room in my family to have creativity, to have an opinion, to have just to be myself. Being your authentic self was kind of like frowned upon, and it was like a very interesting environment. So it's something that I had to learn to do. And so for me, I feel very strongly about being authentic with others, and that natural gravitational pull that comes with that, of like the people who are really your people will find their way into your life and stay, and the people who maybe aren't or don't have the same values will leave, and that's okay. It's like that thing where no one's for everyone. If everyone likes you, then you're faking it at some point.
Right.
When are you faking it? Are you faking it with these people or those people? Because they're clearly, whatever. But being authentic, I think, just means being appropriately honest. And at work, of course, it's not where we want to let all of the dirty laundry out and be like, hey, this is all the drama that's going on in my life and why I'm here. That's not what I mean by that. And that's not what you mean by that. But just being authentic is like, hey, I'm a human. I'm having this problem. Could you bear with me? Could you support me in this way today? Or, hey, I really messed this up. Would you help me to solve this problem? And for me, honestly, that's a way too to help others flex their leadership muscles, is to say, hey, I'm the leader. I'm a leader in our practice. I'm the lead hygienist, and Charissa's the lead hygienist, but I messed up. Like I made a mistake here. I don't know the answer. Do you know the answer? Could you help me come up with an answer? Other people feel really empowered. And then they feel better about coming to us and talking to us about hard things and having open conversations, because we just made ourselves vulnerable in an appropriate way and enabled them to help us solve our problem. And that takes real intention. And I think it's a risk, and it can feel really uncomfortable, especially in leadership, to do that. But for me, being authentic is probably the most important thing that I can do. And I think that's why in my situation, I found that I want to stay at Spodak, and why I've been at Spodak for the last 7 years, because I can be my authentic self. I can be an innovator. I can think creatively. And when others are thinking creatively, I'm like, yes, please. Like, I don't care if you're new. I don't care if you've been here for 10 years. Like, I want to hear your ideas. If you have a system and a way of doing it better, then great. But I think when everyone can do that and just be themselves, that's when the team is at its best and the most powerful. So I feel really, really, out of all our points today, I feel like this is the most important one and speaks the most to me, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot already about enabling and empowering others. And I think we talked a lot about that, like within the practice, but I want to make the point that is what we're doing for our patients every day. Is we, really serve more as like the leader guide for them to their own health and wellness. So we've got to enable them and empower them to help them own their own conditions so that they can make the best decisions for themselves. Right. So I think, that's obviously, that's definitely our leadership role towards the patient. I think, and this goes hand in hand with that, to be a good listener. Great leaders are good listeners, and we listen to learn and not to speak. I know there's been times, I think we've all done this, where you're listening to the other person talk and you're in your head just creating your response back instead of really listening to what they're saying. Mm-hmm. And I think if we fall prey to that with our patients in the chair, sometimes we're going to miss the opportunity to really help them understand what's going on and embrace the situation. I think we've got to listen to, what are their fears? What's their barriers? What's holding them back? So that we can help them work through that and, show them the things that are going on, really educate them.
Right. Right. Because we're all the time making judgments, right? And we have to. That's a part of survival instinct as humans. Like we have to make judgments about, is this thing dangerous to me? Is this thing not? Is this person going to injure me? Is it not? It's part of, our subconscious way of thinking is to like keep us alive, first of all, So I think that we're constantly making judgments for that reason, but then it becomes a lot more superficial as well. Like we're making judgments constantly. And usually as a person starts saying something, they begin a sentence, we've already made a judgment about what they're going to say or what they're thinking or how they're feeling, when in fact we don't know until they tell us, because the way that a person's acting or what they're thinking, it may seem obvious from our perspective and from our historic, experiences and our worldview and our belief system, but it's not from theirs.
Right.
So we don't know, and I don't know until we actually truly listen and ask quality questions and prompt the person to continue explaining and really sit there and try and soak in what they're saying. We don't know the answer.
Right.
I think it's the one of the most detrimental things we can do as leaders is listen and assume that we know,
right,
and act on our assumptions or respond according to our assumptions instead of actually just hearing the information. Because truth is, like I've had a lot of reality checks with our team, meaning like we've had a lot of check-ins, uncomfortable conversations, mediations between team members who are having issues with each other. And if I walked into each of those scenarios thinking, oh, I've done this before, this happened with so-and-so and so-and-so last year, like I'm sure it's going to be the same, probably it's not going to be a very effective outcome or solution if I walk in with that attitude. But if we're all open to listening first, I think that a lot of good can come of it. And again, it's people feel empowered to keep doing it. They'll keep bringing their problems to you or to the table if they feel heard. And if they feel like there is an actual solution, there can't be a solution if we don't understand the problem fully.
Correct. Yes, exactly. I think we also need to be receptive and approachable. And this goes back to what you were talking about, like being transparent with, God, I make a lot of mistakes too. Mm-hmm. So if I'm receptive to criticism or, somebody going, hey, I don't think this looks right. Did you do this right? If they know that I'm approachable, then they're going to come to me as a leader. And that's really, really important. Same thing for patients. You want your patients to feel like they can ask the questions and they can, that you are going to take care of them, that you're going to, respond appropriately. When a patient says no to, the SRP that we're recommending and say, no, I just want a regular cleaning today. We don't like in our heads immediately, be like, well, fine, I'm not going to take care of you then. We want to be approachable and really let everyone around us know that they can come to us if they have issues. Mm-hmm. I think that's really, really important.
Yeah.
I think being accountable is important, that you're going to do what you say you're going to do, and you're going to own those mistakes. We've all been around people who are kind of in denial and, that's really uncomfortable. And that's definitely a fixed mindset of, no, I didn't do that, or I didn't say that, or, oh, well, I meant to do that, but it didn't work out. Again, there's that grace part where, sometimes your intentions are really good and you really want to make that happen and it just didn't work out, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. We've got to give each other grace in this, but just being accountable is really, really important, especially within the medical field. We have a lot of standards that we have to uphold. We've got OSHA, that we're following. We've got, and especially in an era of COVID, really doing things the right way. We've got all these assessments that we're required to take. So being accountable to all of that is really important. And I think it's again, those automatic thoughts where if somebody came and said, well, gosh, I noticed you didn't perio chart that patient, you like immediately get negative about it and, and defensive about it, instead of like, yeah, I know I was really tight for time and I did look, but I didn't have time to chart it. It's just being accountable and approachable and doing what you say you're going to do.
Yeah. And that can sometimes be an inflection point. And sometimes if it's just critical, I think that it's important to be, to use our judgment and to try and be as detached as possible whenever someone gives us feedback like that or questions us, because I think sometimes A question that I ask myself all the time is this a them issue or a me issue or potentially both? And I try and be as detached and objective as possible, even though it's impossible for us to be completely objective about our own situations, right? Because we're all in it. So it's always from a subjective, to some extent, viewpoint. But I think it's just important to say, like, is this maybe a personal attack from them? Is there any truth to what they're saying, and really examine the situation? And if I'm having a hard time seeing objectively, I'll probably get someone else involved and say, like, hey, like someone that I trust, probably a mentor, someone who's older and wiser than me, and say, hey, this is, so-and-so mentioned this. What do you see in this situation? Or this is what happened. Can you tell me honestly? And you know who those people are in your life. It's important to have people who will tell you, like, yeah, you really actually messed up. You could have done a lot better. Or this is where you should go maybe the next time. It's good to have those people to kind of bounce things off of and have as checks and balances as well. That can help us to be accountable. But also, I think what's important in this point is being accountable. Being a great leader is enabling others to stay accountable to their own word too. So I don't think that it's never about blame. It's never about like, you did something wrong and you're a bad person. It's not about shame and blame. It's about like, hey, you made a commitment. I said that I would keep you accountable. So where are you in this process? I noticed you did X instead of Y. Like, what was your train of thought on this? Where do you want to take this in the future or next time? And keeping others accountable. That's a part of being a great leader. And sometimes that's really uncomfortable.
Yep.
And I think it's important to, if someone feels like, gives you some pushback or some, this word is just evading me today. Resistance. Thank you. Yes, resistance. If someone is resisting, I think that it's a good inflection point for everyone, and it's great to tie it back to what the person actually shared before that they want. So if the person, set a goal and you're their accountability partner at the beginning of the year or something, and you ask them, why do you want to achieve this? Like, what's your come from for this? What's going to come of it if you do achieve it? Like, how will that feel? How will that look? What difference will that make in people's lives? Sometimes when they're resistant, they might just be in an emotional state, or it might have been a hard day. But I think it's important to say, like, I remember you told me at the beginning that you really wanted to do this because you wanted to make a difference in people's lives. You wanted to make our profession better. And I can see that you're on your way to doing that. Like, I'm so thankful to be on this journey with you. I can see all the positive changes that you've made. I think in this one section or situation that you mentioned, I think that this could be different in some way, or I think you might be like slightly off track. What do you think? Like, just according to what you said, like put it back on them kind of thing, because it's not about me. I don't want to show them that I'm smarter or better, or I know the answer, because most time I don't, and that's not the case. So like, I just want them to be successful and feel empowered because they've reached the solution and been successful.
Well, and I think it's important to always bring fact over feelings, because again, we tend to filter everything through how it makes us feel and what that automatic feeling is that comes with that, instead of really looking at the facts of the situation. And I have a good example. So like I said, I've had a new assistant for the last 4 months. And so anytime you have a new team member come, everything is new to them. Everything. The amount of things that they are learning and growing and absorbing all day is pretty mind-boggling. And so, when she first came to me, one of the first things she said is, I'm just scared. I don't want to mess anything up. And I was like, you're literally going to mess 1,000 things up. And I'm totally okay with that, because that means you're growing and you're learning. So I found that in the first couple of months, whenever she would do something incorrectly and I would need to go, say, hey, I don't think we did this right. She would be like super defensive. And so one day we were sitting there at the computer and I literally just put my hand on her arm and I was like, so here's the thing. Remember at the beginning when you said you didn't want to make a mistake and I said you're going to make thousands? I was like, this is just one of those. I am not saying you're a bad person. I'm not saying you're doing a bad job. This is new. You don't know it. Let me help you learn the right way, because it's really important that we do everything. We have this whole system set up that if we do it right, it works really effectively. So this is not a personal attack on you. It's just, this didn't go right. Let me show you how to make it right. So that's just an example of how to, like, if you can get somebody to put their defenses down, then that's where you're really going to communicate and win effectively. And I see that same thing with my patients too. Like if I have a patient that comes in, especially a new patient that's really anxious. I had one the other day who was physically shaking. In just talking at the beginning and sitting in the chair. And I always at the beginning just kind of put them to, at ease by saying, hey, I want you to know that while you are here, you are absolutely in control. If I am saying or doing something that's not working for you, you put your hands up, we will figure out a different way. Like, I am working for you, so you get to run the show. And I feel like anytime you can put somebody, on the offense like that, like they get to control the situation, they get to own that, I think it takes a lot of those defenses down. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And I think that one point that I want to make now too is, your assistant chose to become vulnerable and become open to making mistakes and chose to make a change in that situation. But there are people who are not willing to do that, and that's their choice. So I think as leaders, sometimes we feel completely responsible for someone's reaction or response or how they grow. But in reality, like, leadership is about helping others take charge of their own life and their own outcomes and empowering them to be strong and stand on their own 2 feet kind of thing, So at the end of the day, they do have a choice. So for me, I want to create a safe and structured environment for people to do their best work. And, as long as I'm doing that, and that's my come from, how a person reacts and responds is really up to them. And this is when a coworker, just like patients sometimes see their way out of the practice, this is when a coworker may choose to see their way out of the practice. I have had a very small number of team members who just were not willing to do self-evaluation. We're not willing to segregate their self-worth from constructive feedback. They weren't willing to do that, no matter how many conversations we had or who they received the feedback from or how it was delivered. It was a them problem, So I think that it's really cool in that situation that your assistant was willing to pivot and make an adjustment and say, oh, this is what she was talking about. Okay. And then she kind of became open to not being perfect and understanding that's not what it's about. And you don't expect that from her. That might be a switch. That's no problem. That might be a switch for some people. We're all coming from a different place. But at the end of the day, if she had said, oh, well, you're, I don't want to do that, or had chosen not to look at the situation separately from her own value or self-worth, that would have been a her thing. She would have made a decision for herself. And that's okay. Like, that's how we learn, like, is this person, a person that we want to keep or not keep? And for that person, like, do you want to stay or not, or go, and at Spodak, we have a 90-day trial hire period. And it's specifically for that reason. It's a trial hire because as great of a fit as things might look on paper and our values might look aligned and different things might look aligned, if you don't have that growth and that growth kind of mindset or the ability to look at things from a non-personal perspective, then you could get stuck easily.
Right. And I'll say, just that conversation that we had now, when I come and say, hey, I don't think this got done right, there's not that resistance anymore. It's like, oh, what did I do? And it's a much easier working relationship. So yeah, you're exactly right. And that 90 days is a really great concept because 90 days gives you enough time to kind of see, like, are we a good fit? Is this somebody who's willing to kind of be open and open to criticism? And, I think we do the same thing at Atlanta Dental Spa. So I think that's a smart thing.
Right.
So I want to wrap this up. And I know you just said it a minute ago, but I want to say it again because I think it's really, really important. It's a good question for us to ask ourselves is, are we creating a safe and structured environment for people to do their best work, for patients to get the best care? And I think that's a question we need to ask ourselves. Am I creating the safest environment with the best structure for my patients to get healthy and my team members to feel safe and supported and encouraged? So on that note, I hope all of you will kind of do some self-evaluation and take back to your teams this amazing leader that you are absolutely created to be. And we'd love any input or feedback from you to know if you need any support or help on that front. Send us your strategies. What are you doing that's working for you? We love to learn and grow.
Yep. And I want to remind everyone, we've got tons of new content on leadership and many other topics coming your way live in Austin this coming July at our Bulletproof Summit. And it's going to be 2 full days of fresh information on all things hygiene. Charissa and I are like ecstatic to see people's faces, to shake your hands, to give you hugs. So please come see us there. If you want to join us at our Bulletproof Summit in the hygiene portion of Bulletproof Summit, go to bulletproofsummit.com. You can get more information about ticket prices, early bird specials. Our early bird tickets are actually sold out at this point. But there are other tickets available, lots of great content coming your way. And we could not be more excited for preparing for that and just really being a part of that this year. It's going to be an amazing event. Please don't miss it. We want to see you guys' faces there. And if you want to connect with us on a more personal level, please go to, Mighty Network. That's the easiest way to touch base with us. It's an app you can download, Mighty Networks, and search Bulletproof Hygiene, and you can please pick our brains. We'll pick your brains, and it'll be this amazing brain picking session that's ongoing. Thank you so much for joining us today. We can't wait to see you at the summit or chat with you on our Mighty Network. We'll talk to you soon.
Have a great week, everybody.